My mother-in-law insisted on giving my baby a DNA test because he is darker, but it dug up something shady and ruined her marriage. I need to vent about something that has been consuming me. My mother-in-law has always been a bit dominant, but this time she crossed the line. My husband and I recently had a baby. We have been together for 6 years, married for 3 years. We have always had a strong and loving relationship, and our little blessing, our daughter, was a dream come true. We were happy when she was born and never expected something to cloud this happiness. Then my mother-in-law came in. I was drowsy from medication and trauma, and my husband was rocking the baby to sleep. When my mother-in-law walked into the hospital room, the first sentence I heard from her was, "Whose baby are you carrying?" Her question left me perplexed. My husband said it was our baby, the one I was holding. She said, "So why is she black?" My husband and I were as shocked as she was. My husband looked at me. We were not sure why this question came up in her head. I replied that black skin color is in my family. Maybe that's why she inherited the genes from her maternal family, but she ignored me, saying, "What?" She refused to understand genetics. She was determined to state that if my husband and I have brown skin, how could our daughter be black? My mother-in-law has always been a difficult person. She is the type who wants everything to be done her own way and does not hesitate to criticize when things do not meet her standards. Over the years, I have learned to deal with her behavior, but this time it went too far. I was furious about her comments. How could she imply that I had been unfaithful to my husband? I was already in too much pain and anxiety to withstand her toxicity. I asked her if she meant I was cheating on my husband. She said, "I won't spell it out. I'm just listing the facts, but if you want to confess, go ahead." I stared at my husband, and he took her away, saying we should discuss this later. It was time for the mom and baby to rest. He came back to my bed and assured me not to be bothered by my mother-in-law's unpleasant comments. We thought she was simply being malicious, as she couldn't bear my happiness and chose to ruin it with her comments. I let it go because we weren't that close to my in-laws. She visited me again the next day. Frankly, the doctor on duty was in the room for the checkup. When he left, my mother-in-law asked if there was any chance that the baby had been replaced because she was black while we were brown. I was astounded by her behavior. The doctor laughed and said that this was the same baby that had been taken out from within me and also that it was too early to determine the baby's skin color. It takes 4 to 6 months for skin color to settle. She left the room together with the doctor and never saw me again, neither me nor the baby. She lives far from our place, which is a great relief, but every time we meet her at social gatherings, she makes sure to poison them with her sarcastic comments about my baby's skin color. When my baby was about 3 months old, we received an invitation for my brother-in-law's son's birthday. It was the first event for our daughter. We were so excited to take her to meet extended family members. She took it as an opportunity to humiliate me publicly. She went out with some toxic relatives and talked badly about my baby and me. One of them commented that brown should be shades of brown and not black, implying that someone had mixed black and brown. It infuriated me. They made this comment to embarrass me. I interrupted, "Sorry, what do you mean?" My mother-in-law said nothing, claiming they were just talking about colors. They looked at each other and burst out laughing, making me feel uncomfortable. I left the event immediately. A couple of similar incidents followed. The only reason I let this slide then was because I was busy with my newborn. As a new mom, everything was too overwhelming for me. But now I guess it's time to act. The last straw was a week ago. My baby turned 6 months old. Some friends came to celebrate this milestone with us. Suddenly, my mother-in-law appeared. I did not want a confrontation in front of my friends, so I said nothing and received her inside the house. She walked in and said, "The skin should have settled after 6 months. Let me see what you've got." Everyone was stunned by her comment. One of my friends was holding the baby and passed her to my mother-in-law. She looked at my baby and exclaimed, "Oh, still black," and returned the baby to my friend. I stayed there in shock, just understanding what had happened and what I should say to save face. I decided to strike back since she had already started the show. My husband was in the kitchen, so I shouted his name and asked him to come out. He ran out, and I told him that his mother needed biology lessons because she clearly doesn't understand genetics or maybe hasn't even attended school. Only an illiterate person can talk so much nonsense. My mother-in-law looked at my husband and whispered, "I didn't want to bring this up in front of everyone." She recognized her mistake. I interrupted her and sarcastically told my husband about her comments. She made a puppy face and said no one would have understood because it was too subtle. She said, "Now that you've taken it out in front of everyone, let me be clear. I demand a DNA test for the baby or else she will not get the family name." I yelled at her to leave. My husband made it clear that he trusts me and that there is no way we will do a DNA test on the child. Even if the in-laws disinherit the child, we don't give a damn. The thing is, even though my husband listens and supports me and I know I have never been unfaithful to him, I want to take the DNA test and throw the report in my mother-in-law's face. But part of me is holding back, thinking that I should not give in to my mother-in-law's demands and feed her ego. What do you think is the best way to put my mother-in-law in her place? Update. Thank you all for your suggestions. Getting some perspectives was refreshing to some extent. I had the option of avoiding the test and cutting my mother-in-law from our lives. We did that, but she wasn't going to shut her mouth. She was still hanging around, talking about me and my baby. The best way to deal with this was to take the test and throw it at her as it has always been. Let me know when the reports come out. We performed the test and, as expected, it resulted in a 99.99% match with my husband. My husband called her and reported that the report was ready and that she should come and see it herself. She came, but not alone. She was with her sisters, as evil as she was. They entered the house, hugged my husband, and said, "I am sorry, my child. I know it hurt, but it was important for the truth to come out." My husband broke free and gave the envelope to my mother-in-law. In the meantime, my mother-in-law's sisters gave me strange looks, as if to say, "Oh, are you still here?" My mother-in-law opened the report and read it. She stared at it for a good 5 minutes. I took the report out of her hands and asked if she needed help to understand it because it could be difficult for a 6th grader to understand the information. She said, literally, "Look, your confidence, you fake it, right?" My husband fell for it and said we were done with her and that we no longer wanted her in our lives. She was trying to manipulate my husband, but he asked her to leave and told her we were cutting ties. She cried and left the house enraged, her sisters following her with bitter faces. But that wasn't all. I initiated an email to all members of the extended family and close relatives whom my mother-in-law had poisoned regarding my daughter's paternity test and sent them the DNA report. I described how my mother-in-law had been torturing me and accusing me of infidelity during my crucial postpartum period. Most of them responded with support. Since then, my mother-in-law has maintained a low profile and has not reappeared in our lives. My father-in-law also called me and apologized for not having maintained control over my mother-in-law and failing to keep the family together. He asked if he could be in my baby's life. I told him I had a problem with him for not defending me and allowing me to be slandered. But he understood that he didn't want to ruin the peace of his house, so it's okay. I made it clear to him that he could see my baby alone in my house and under no circumstances would share space with his toxic grandmother. He said nothing but showed up a few days later at my house with flowers and baby essentials to compensate for the harm caused. Some people need to be put in their place. My mother-in-law deserved it and she brought it upon herself. Update 2, well, who knew there was much more to come? It seems that my mother-in-law was projecting her own insecurities onto me. After that email, many relatives on my father-in-law's side approached me to offer their support. They said they knew about my mother-in-law's wickedness. She had always been a narcissistic woman. Some hinted that she had been on a wild streak in her younger days, but no one said anything concrete. It was my father-in-law's sister who blurted out that my mother-in-law used to fool around with her neighbor when my father-in-law was deployed in the army. She mentioned Richard, a man I had not heard of before. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more than it seemed, so I decided to dig a little deeper into her past, something I had never considered doing before. I was not prepared for what I found. I tried to sound out other relatives on my father-in-law's side, and some other people mentioned it. According to them, Richard and my mother-in-law were very close, and there were rumors about their relationship, but nothing was confirmed. They were seen together in restaurants and shopping malls, but she manipulated my father-in-law, and he remained in denial. I was still processing the information and contemplating what to do about it when there was another encounter with my mother-in-law. We went to attend the funeral of one of my husband's distant relatives. Upon seeing me, she made a comment out loud, "Well, if you have legs to open, you can fake any report." When you see me, made a loud comment, "Well, if you have legs to open, you can find any report." These men in the laboratories can manipulate any test report for a cheap thrill, so I do not trust these reports. He did not explicitly mention my daughter's paternity test, but it was evident that he was talking bad about me, insinuating that I slept with a lab technician to manipulate the DNA report. I am so sick of this woman. She doesn't care about being cut off from the baby's life. If she is still her narcissistic self and clings to her accusations, I don't know how much truth there is in these rumors about the guests surrounded by my mother-in-law, but it would be like winning the lottery if I could discover the dirt of their past. The problem is that the rumor goes back 30 years. I don't know how to investigate that past. I would be grateful if you could help me with any suggestions. I really have to do something about this toxic woman. Update 3, well, thanks for the advice. I received some really good ones. Hiring a private detective was one of the options I was considering. In fact, I was in contact with one of the agencies when something else came up. In between, my father-in-law came to invite us to his retirement party. I declined the invitation because I didn't want to share a space with my mother-in-law. He assured me that my mother-in-law feels guilty about her behavior and wants to work on the relationship with me. He insisted that I forgive and we reunite as a family. I told him what happened at the funeral the other day. He asked me if he could do anything to change my mind. I told him I would consider forgiving my mother-in-law if he took a paternity test for their children. My husband and father-in-law were confused by my request. My father-in-law said he was sure that both of their children were his. I told him that my husband and I knew that our baby was ours. However, I need the test to satisfy his wife's ego, so he had to take the test to be on hand and wanted to see his family united. Otherwise, we were happy to be alone. My husband tried to inquire into my reasoning, but I made it clear that my demand was non-negotiable. My father-in-law said, "Well, if that's what you really want, we can do it for you. There's nothing to lose, right?" I replied, "Well, I guess so. Time will tell." My father-in-law and husband gave their samples the same day. I asked my sister-in-law to take the test as well. She was called but refused to give her sample, saying I was out of this. I did not keep my hopes high because the chances were very low. What if my husband was his son and my sister-in-law was not? And if my mother-in-law had had an affair, but she had never had a baby with her lover? However, I was determined to humiliate my mother-in-law in one way or another. If this DNA test worked in my mother-in-law's favor, I would have planned something else for her. My suspicion became partially true even before the reports came out. When my father-in-law returned home and told her about the paternity issue, she went crazy. She yelled at him for taking the test without her consent and insisted that he cancel it. Her reason was that she didn't want to feed my ego, but this time she couldn't manipulate my father-in-law, and he realized he smelled a rat. He said he would not cancel it, and now he was waiting for the report. My mother-in-law called my husband and tried to manipulate him emotionally by saying, "Do not trust your mother." My husband also said, "I trust you and I also trust my wife. However, you will test it just to satisfy your ego. Let's accept it as a formality." She said it was feeding my ego, and I should cancel it. My husband said, "What is the point of canceling? We have already paid for it and given the sample. Let's look at the report and finish this." Seeing their despair, I understood that I had touched a sensitive nerve. To divert everyone's attention, he acted as interpreter, claiming that he slipped in the shower and fractured his back and knees. Unfortunately, that went wrong for her, and she was bedridden. I went to see her and said, "It is sad that you have been confined to bed, otherwise, you could also have opened your legs and manipulated the reports." She insulted me, and I laughed in her face. I knew what was coming our way. I don't know why he didn't confess and let my father-in-law find out through the report. As expected, there was a 0.9% relationship between my father-in-law and my husband, which meant that he was not the father. I knew how the report would turn out and was following it through the serial number. The day I was supposed to leave, I went to my mother-in-law's house to witness the drama in person. When I arrived, I handed the report to my father-in-law, who got furious and threw it in my mother-in-law's face. She pretended not to understand what he was saying. I picked it up and said, "This means that my father-in-law is not the father of your child. I am not sure about the daughter." However, I laughed inside. If karma really exists, that's how it should work. My mother-in-law acted as if she fainted from pain. I called my husband and told him that my mother-in-law had fainted, so he should come running home from work. He came and saw the report for himself. My father-in-law forced my mother-in-law to confess, but she continued to deny, saying that she did not know how it gave that result. She even blamed me for manipulating the report to take revenge on her. I told him, "If you don't believe this report, you can have it tested in a couple more places to rule out the possibility of error or manipulation." She did not want to do so and did not accept the report. After much back and forth, my father-in-law shouted, "What is it?" There was a sepulchral silence in the room. My mother-in-law broke down in tears and said she would confess everything, but wanted me to leave. I took my bag and stood up, but my father-in-law said, "She won't go anywhere. You humiliated her in front of the world. Now she will stay right there." She began to cry and confess that she had been cheating with the neighbor Richard. When my father-in-law was deployed, she said she was alone. My husband and father-in-law looked at her with horrified looks. My husband came out furious, and I followed him. He just drove away without me. I returned home. My mission was accomplished. I waited for my husband until 10 p.m. before calling him. He declined the call, and I gave him space. I fell asleep while putting my baby to sleep. I don't know when he got home. I hugged him while he was sleeping. He whispered, "You knew that, didn't you?" I nodded and hugged him tightly. The next morning, my husband had a fever and ended up sick. He refused to get out of bed, saying that he was having an existential crisis. I have made an appointment for his therapy. I hope that helps him accept their reality. In the meantime, my father-in-law went to see my sister-in-law and showed her the report. She was furious. He also took the test, but finished with 99%. So she is my father-in-law's daughter, but my husband is Richard's. The thing is, no one knows where Richard is, not even my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law didn't even tell her that my husband was her son because he was a careless man. It could have created chaos in my mother-in-law's perfect family, so she silently pulled him out of her life. So, she quietly pulled him out of her life. At this point, I'm not sure if my husband even wants to reconcile with his biological father. However, my father-in-law came to our house a couple of days ago and collapsed. He said he didn't know how to have this conversation. I got up to give them room to talk as father and son, but he insisted that I stay. To alleviate the discomfort, I suggested that maybe we could continue as we are, respecting and loving each other as human beings, if we don't want to give them a relationship label. My father-in-law said he went to couples therapy with my mother-in-law, and there she confessed that she projected her insecurities onto me since my daughter had black skin. She thought I had cheated on my husband as she had. Fortunately, her cheating did not come to light because my husband inherited all the characteristics of my mother-in-law and not Richard. I don't know how the relationship between my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and my husband will be shaped from this point, but I am pleased to have discovered the truth behind my mother-in-law's mask. My father-in-law entrusted this trauma to his sister, the same one who gave me the clue about my mother-in-law's romance with Richard. She called me yesterday and applauded me for going further to discover this truth. She said she had knocked my mother-in-law down for 2 hours because my mother-in-law had always been cruel to her. It's only a matter of time before the whole family and relatives know the truth about her. When my mother-in-law was confessing, I felt bad for her, but when I saw the whole picture, I think she brought it on herself. She could have kept silent, like she had done for years, instead of picking on me for my baby's skin color, She finished her own smile and now she has to lie in it. Update 4. Well, we are facing a divorce between my father-in-law and mother-in-law. For now, my husband wants to keep his father in his life, and we will also keep him close to our daughter. He has considered him his father all this time and he doesn't see why he should change that now. My husband doesn't want to contact Richard either, as he doesn't see the point now after so many years. We don't even know if he's alive or not. My mother-in-law, of course, is devastated because she never expected things to escalate this way, but she brought it on herself and had many moments to stop this. But she insisted until she brought out my vengeful side. She had to insist a lot because I had just become a mother and had no interest in all this drama. But she pressed the right buttons to make this truth explode in her face. Of course, seeing her mistake was not enough for her. And that's why she needs to blame me for her failed marriage. Sure, spreading her legs for the neighbor while her husband fought for the country wasn't the problem, it was me. But in her twisted head, I don't know what she has inside, much gray matter, I don't think. Because she sees me as the villain. But no one else does. Because even the family has already left her aside. Yes, even my husband doesn't talk to her. And neither does my sister-in-law. But you know, when an animal is cornered, it's more dangerous. So my mother-in-law tried something as a last resort. A week ago, I began to notice that there were fake accounts on social networks that left negative and offensive comments on my posts. At first, I thought it might be a coincidence, but then I began to receive private messages full of insults and baseless accusations about my character and my relationship with my husband. These messages mentioned personal things that only someone close to the family could know. One night, I received a message from an anonymous profile that said, "Soon everyone will know the truth about you. You are nothing more than an imposter and a manipulator. Your time will come." I realized that this was not just a casual attack by an internet troll. There was something else behind it. I decided to investigate and noticed that several of the profiles attacking me were following the same friends and family accounts. The most surprising was that one of these anonymous profiles was being followed by my mother-in-law. With this new suspicion, I confronted my mother-in-law directly. I called her and asked if she knew anything about these attacks. She, of course, denied everything, saying she had no idea what I was talking about and that someone was surely trying to sow discord among us. But I knew, and even my husband knew, that she had been creating false profiles, thinking that no one would catch her. With this evidence in hand, I organized a family gathering and presented all the information. My mother-in-law tried once again to deny everything, but this time the evidence was irrefutable. My husband, furious and hurt, told his mother that she had gone too far and that she was, from that moment on, totally out of our lives. He warned her that if she continued to interfere, we would seek a restraining order. After that, nobody spoke to her, and my father-in-law left the house until the divorce and sale were settled. Despite everything, she seemed to put no end to her attacks, as she still tried to attack me. I don't know what she expects from all this because attacking me won't change the fact of her infidelity. My husband believes she may have begun to develop senile dementia or something similar because before this whole episode, she didn't have these behaviors, at least not to this extent. She should probably receive attention, but now no one in the family wants to help her. I don't know if someone on her family side wants to help her, but at least that's not my problem. Update 5. My husband's theory that she may have dementia seems increasingly true. A few days ago, she came home, but she was not at her best. She was dressed in dirty clothes and was not presentable enough to leave home. She knocked on the door and was yelling things like, "You have a black lover. Don't lie to me." We called the police, and when they arrived, they conducted a preliminary exam and decided it was best to take her to a place where she could receive attention because she clearly was not in her right mind. Even when the police arrived, she continued to say inconsistencies. She even claimed that my daughter's father was Richard, possibly because Richard is a man of color, or perhaps because all ideas had been mixed up in her head. I won't deny that I felt somewhat sorry for seeing her like this, although I am still affected by the things she said before. At least now she will receive treatment and be away from me for a while. Feeling sorry for her doesn't mean I forgive her or anything like that. Nothing changes from the past, with or without illness. If you're liking it, follow us for more full stories.